It's the wee hours of the morning. You're all tucked into your rig, and it comes into your head that there might be some kind of animal in camp. You can just kind of feel it. It's right outside the window, and maybe you're thinking it's a bear, or a coyote, or a fox, or a moose. Maybe you're excited about that. Maybe you're scared. Then you hear it.
Maximalist minivars with Mary and Captain and you. Get on the bus!
I'm in beautiful Colorado. I'm meeting up with some friends to camp. I haven't spent much time in Colorado, so I think this is going to be fun. Another thing that I think is going to be fun then is that I'm sharing the campsite not only with Linda and Bob, but also with a bunch of cows. And for the story on that, we're going to have to go back a ways. Back in the homesteading days, the land that we call the BLM, the land that we camp on and live on, it was just public domain. It was considered common area. The problem with common area, and you know this if you've ever had roommates, the problem with common area is that because everyone's responsible for it, nobody's responsible for it. And so back then, everybody just kind of, let their cattle graze wherever, everywhere. It was the other guy's problem. And this led to certain areas being basically decimated because there were just too many animals storage. So in 1934, at the request of ranchers initially, this has become very contentious today, but initially they wanted this. Congress passed the Taylor Grazing Act. The Grazing Act created grazing districts, and they were under the jurisdiction of a brand new government agency, newly created, the U.S. Grazing Service. Permits were issued. You had to have a permit to graze in a certain area, and they were cheap. But to get one, you had to own land. You had to have land where your animals could graze during part of the year, and then the government would lease you grazing rights to the public land for the rest of the year while your land was recovering. By requiring land ownership, the permit system eliminated nomadic ranchers. People who had no land of their own and just spent their time wandering with their herds to wherever there was something to eat. And that is probably why the land-owning ranchers were on board, why they wanted this, is it eliminated a lot of competition. Though it sucks that the nomads were pushed out. The reduction in cows, sheep, and goats really did help a lot to restore the land and the wildlife. After about a decade under this system, the grazing services operations were brought to a halt by a dispute between the House and Senate. So because of the dispute, there was no appropriation to the grazing service. The fees they were charging were really small, basically tokens, not enough to cover the operations. And because they couldn't really pay their own bills, that it became pretty ineffective. In 1946, under President Truman, the Grazing Service and the General Land Office were merged to create the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM that we know today, which is under the Department of the Interior. They took over the grazing situation. During the 60s and 70s, if you're old enough, you might remember, conservation really became a thing, and it was a truly bipartisan thing, by the way. Here's Republican President Richard Nixon in his first State of the Union address in 1970.
The great question of the 70s is, shall we surrender to our surroundings, or shall we make our peace with nature and begin to make reparations for the damage we have done to our air, to our land, and to our water?
Most people don't know this, especially in today's divided political landscape, but many of the most important, well, probably all of the most important environmental policies in the country's history came into existence during the Nixon administration. The creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the National Environmental Policy Act, the Clean Air Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and the creation of 642 new parks. All of that happened through a Republican president working with the Democrat-led Congress.
Restoring nature to its natural state is a cause beyond party and beyond factions. It has become a common cause of all the people of this country.
It's funny how separated the parties are about this stuff today in their views about conservation. Back then, it was barely looked at as being political. It was really about survival.
It is a cause of particular concern to young Americans because they, more than we, will reap the grim consequences of our failure to act on programs which are needed now if we are to prevent disaster later.
Anyway, the new emphasis on conservation led to the passage in 1978 of the Federal Land Policy and Management Act. The new policy was to keep all the remaining public lands public, managing them for multiple uses and sustained yield. That is, making sure that the grass grows back, the land stays healthy, and that people have access, which is why we are able to camp on it today. The grazing contracts continued, but there were frequently adjustments made to cover this multiple use thing. There are a lot of problems. You know, ranching is a very expensive business and it requires a lot of land, and permits control a big chunk of that land. So it seems inevitable. To be fair, the BLM has a very tough task meeting the needs of the farms that produce so much of our food and balancing that with the need to protect wildlife. It's impossible to make everybody happy. There's a big revamp of grazing rights on the table right now, the first one in 30 years, and already it's contentious between environmental groups and ranchers. You have one side arguing that the fees need to be raised, they need to be higher to cover the damage that's done from the grazing, and the other side wants the fees to stay low. Then there's a whole group to the far end of that who don't feel the government has the right to charge any fees at all, though this argument has been shot down all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. You might remember the Bundy standoff, which was a 2014 armed confrontation between BLM agents and a group of ranchers who were joined by groups like the Youth Keepers. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of that whole dispute, which is kind of a hot button reflection of how that conservation harmony we had back in the 60s and 70s is not where we are today. There are definitely a lot of complications and a lot of conflict in a system that put the cows on the BLM, and there are definitely two sides to that story. But I'm here now, so let's see what the cows themselves think. I had just finished my breakfast when this bunch showed up. Captain isn't quite sure what to make of them. He's generally pretty good with large animals, though it's mostly horses he's met so far. Cody barks at them, and of course Captain wants to be like his big buddy, so...
No, buddy. No, Captain! Captain!
Okay, who am I kidding? Captain does plenty of barking on his own.
You scared him off.
The cows here are likely brought in from farms like this one down in the valley below. Linda said there's a cistern in here. It's a water source that the cows go to every day, but I haven't seen it yet.
And you can see one of those tanks.
Oh, that must be, it's been such a dry year, there's no water here. It makes sense.
On our walks every morning, Captain and I encounter a lot of cows. Some of them seem afraid of us. Some of them are kind of indifferent, like we're not even there. And some of them, they're a little intimidating, frankly, with their kabuki mask faces and cold stares. And if there are babies involved, which there are a fair number of babies, it becomes kind of a stare down. I don't really know what the cows are trying to tell me, how they weigh in on all of this. I feel like they're trying to say something for sure. What do you think?
Hi.
That was great. I was not afraid at all.
Can we be friends? No, Captain. Captain, come here. Here's another unexpected animal encounter in camp. Check it out. I'll see you over there.